When she'd calmed down, and she said, "Well, what the hell did you buy that for?" I undone my jacket and put it on the mic stand. I then literally just ripped my shirt open, buttons flying everywhere.
Carl, how did you find carnivore?
Uh, Through frustration, and concern about my own health. If I take a very quick step back, I'm the youngest of seven boys. My poor old mum wanted the girl every time, and she got seven sons. So, and I'm not sure if I can swear on here or not, but apparently, when I was first born, and they said, "Mrs. Day, you've got another little boy," she went, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" So that was the first words my mother greeted me with. Um, so obviously, being the youngest of seven, my father was a big fan or a lover of wildfowling. Some people would call it stealing, but he would call it wildfowling. But he would go out and eat because he had so many mouths to feed. He was an engineer by trade, but he loved to go out shooting and fishing and all that. So growing up, I ate incredibly healthy. I ate like a king. We were eating pheasant and partridge and goose and mullets and cod, and we were eating fish that had literally been swimming in the sea that morning. So we were brought up, and being seven boys, were quite a competitive group of guys. So I was very fit, and was quite pleased with my sort of levels of fitness growing up. I did judo at quite a senior level. I competed internationally a few events in Europe. So I was very fit. I played rugby. I did football. So you can imagine I was one of these guys that was fairly active across the park of sports, really. So as you get older and older, you start to enjoy life. You discover things called alcohol, women, lifestyle that's probably not as good as I'd been living before. But as you do, and got married, left the home, and then as the years go by, you enjoy life, you experience life to its degree, but obviously the pounds start sneaking on. A bit of background: my father was diabetic. His father, well, my grandfather was diabetic. His father was diabetic, and his father. So we had a whole line of diabetes in the family. Uh, One of my elder brothers is now diabetic. So as I was getting older and piling on the weight, and I always used to joke to people that I'd gone from judo to sumo, and by the time I was in my mid 40s, I was hovering close to obesity. And then as I crept into my 50s, I would clearly say I was seriously obese. I was getting to the point of being clinically obese, and I was heading towards diabetes in a very fast and sharp way. My mother was Irish, brought up around things like Guinness and things like that. So I wasn't a heavy drinker, but when I went out on a session, as I'd call it, I would have 5 to 10 pints of Guinness in an evening, plus other bits and pieces. So as you can appreciate, my health was deteriorating from being a very fit young man, a very active young man. I was finding I was coming home and falling asleep on the sofa by 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, had no energy to do anything, was really starting to get concerned. The diabetes thing in the back of your mind comes forward again. So I decided in my early 50s to try and go, believe it or not, vegan. Although it had a level of success, I lost weight. I was constantly hungry. I could eat the chair I was sitting on, sort of thing. It was never seemed to be satisfying. I was always a bit grumpy on it. I felt it wasn't the for me. I then tried Slimmer's World. I tried all the different shakes and amazing wonder size, and I never found anything that I could stick to. I think the longest I probably stuck to was about 2 months, but by the second month I was cheating already, and knew I was cheating. So I found, I was constantly in searching for a solution. And then my wife at the time she's a big fan of Jordan Peterson and his viewpoints, and she was watching something on YouTube, and it was I think a lot of carnival people refer to it, the interview with Joe Rogan when he was talking about the lion diet. And I sat there and I laughed and I said, "You can't maintain a diet like that." So part jokingly, the wife said, "Well, why didn't you try it for a few weeks? You've tried everything else." So, being a skeptic, coming from a not academic background, but I've done an MBA, I've done sort of various sort of studies. I thought, right, let's find out a bit more about it. And I looked into it, and I then come across um, Dr. Ken Berry. I think everyone knows. And then there was Dr. Chafee. Then there was Kilts, and I started looking. And funny enough, I come across some of your podcasts talking to individuals, and then the one that hit home for me was the Carnivore Soldier, Larry, and obviously Kerry from Homestead How, because they seem to be talking very similar languages to what I did, and I could really relate to it. So I turned around, basically said I'll try it for a month. So on the 20th of June 2023, I was hovering. I do my weights in kilos for my judo days. So I was about 100 and just under 120 kilos for someone that's 6 foot tall. So not in a good way. Again, blood pressure was up. Didn't I snored like a trooper, and it got to the point with the wife that she would wake me in the night, and I wouldn't even say anything. I'd just get up and go to the spare room. It was almost like an automatic function we'd got into. So it was affecting our relationship. It was affecting my sleep. It was affecting my overall health. So I thought, what have I got to lose? And to my absolute surprise, within 2 weeks, the transitional change in me was almost like, this can't be right. This is odd. I'm I'm sleeping better. I started within 2 weeks. I'd stopped snoring, which was key, which probably helped with the sleep side of it. I noticed weight was coming off. I noticed I went from the standard 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, to almost dropping down to 1 stroke 2 meals a day. And then within a week or so after that, I was down to probably one proper meal and then almost like a snacky meal thereafter. And I just felt a surge of energy. I decided to do a diary. I was monitoring my weight on like every third day, and the weight drop was surprising. I was, instead of losing it in terms of ounces and pounds, I was losing it in kilos, and I just found it just ticked the box. I'm just coming up to 8 months on it now. I felt brilliant. I've carried on with my study in it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later. It's inspired me now to start. 2024 is the start of my research to do a PhD around the subject of carnivore. I'm still trying to fine tune what the subject matter will be, but I come across one guy called Professor David Diamond. I saw a couple of his interviews about cholesterol, because the amazing thing is, when you're obese and you're living a really unhealthy lifestyle, no one's that bothered. They're just happy to see you happy. The minute you take action, and I'm sure you've heard this 100 times from the people you've interviewed, you suddenly have a few million doctors in the room, all saying, "Oh, you're going to have a heart attack. Your cholesterol's going to be. Your blood pressure's going to be this." They all suddenly become very concerned about your health. Summarize up where I am now. I have blood pressure of a teenager. I'm 57 years old. My resting heart rate is now around about 52, 53, which before was in the 60s and 70s, which is not very good for a resting heart rate, especially of a man of my age. My I'm now down to the weight that I competed at judo when I was 18, and I'm actually just dipping below it, because in January I've testing myself out on the lion diet, and it's suddenly, from plateauing down to a weight, it's suddenly starting to drop off. But I'm only just 2 weeks into it, so I'm pleased I plotted my progress, because I'm now using that data, and I'm seeing how I react with the line dart as part of the research I'm going to be doing. So it's almost like I'm a self experiment. But I just keep finding the results get better and better and better. The weirdest thing I've discovered, and I only discovered it a few days ago. I had to go to a family funeral. One of my aunts passed away, and I put a pair of black shoes on that I haven't worn for probably over a year, and I discovered my feet had shrunk. Now, uh, partly because of the judo, partly because of my weight, whatever. But I had size 14 feet, which is 49 European size. I only know the UK size, so basically fairly large, wide feet. So I put these shoes on that. If you look at the shoes, you can see how they've been stretched by my feet being in them over a period of time, and they felt like I was wearing flip flops. It was the most bizarrest thing I've ever come across, and I've had to now find other shoes that were smaller to have, because all my existing shoes are just like slippers. They're not slippers. They're even looser than slippers. They're like, as I say, flip flops is probably the best way to describe it.
That's awesome. I'm really interested in all the changes you've experienced, and congratulations on those. When you said kind of about 2 weeks in, you started to notice things. It wasn't. Was it a situation where you noticed some gradual changes, or like 2 weeks in, you suddenly went, things have been different for the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, that's exact. But I mentioned in my long summary was I was coming home. I was sitting on the sofa and I was falling asleep. Suddenly, I'm finding out that I was still wide awake at 10, 11 o'clock at night. I wasn't feeling tired. I wanted to go and walk the dog, where before it was, oh, I've got to go and walk the dog. So I found the energy switch was the first thing I noticed, as well as noticing a slight drop in weight. But I've I just yeah, it was almost like one of those, not eureka moments, but it kind of sneaks up on you. But when you think it, oh, this is not happening. I think you interviewed the fantastic Lauren, the farmer's wife lady, and she made a comment
Mm.
on yours about the sinuses and all that clearing up, because I used to always have congestion in the morning, and it was things like that. You think back and think, God, I haven't had to blast my nose clear again in the mornings for a period of time, or so yeah. So the first couple of weeks, the first week is odd, because obviously you've got a lot of transitions with your body. I like to think I was fortunate that I probably only had about 2 3 hours of having to stay very close to the toilet. I did have one morning with a really sort of weird headachy, cloudy headache, which they say is carnival flu, whatever, but that cleared up really quickly. Um, so that first week, I didn't really notice too much other than the negative connections to the switch to the lifestyle. But in the second week, I felt more energetic. I was awake longer. I was finding it when I woke up, my mind was almost like on, I don't like to use the term drugs, but like a speed. It was like really active when I first woke up, rather than that, oh, I've got to get out of bed, oh, I've got to go get ready for work. It was like, right, what are we doing? And that was mind blowing for me.
And we kind of get so used to all these kind of problems, like the waking up with the blocked sinuses, or the waking up feeling like, oh, I've got to go to work. That we just accept that as that's life, and we accept that we're just going to have to carry that through until we retire or whatever.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you put it. I'm 57 years old. I remember my father at 57, and he would have his aches and pains and bits and pieces, and I would think, well, that's just the process of getting older. But then suddenly I say about my heart rate and all that side of it, but I feel like I'm back in my early 20s, if not late teens. It's so energetic, and people have said when I've been talking to people, though, I'm much more, hands are everywhere, and where before I was sort of like, how are you, and all that. It's just like I've been plugged into the mains or something. It's just brilliant.
That's a really good way of describing it. Plugged into the mains. I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're doing one meal a day,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
And there
And
are
how
sometimes I actually miss the meal totally without, not intentionally. It's just that you just don't feel hungry.
so you'll go a whole day with nothing?
Yeah. Well, water. I do
Wow.
drink quite a lot of water.
Okay. Yeah. And so has your wife or anyone else in your family decided, "Oh, I'm gonna give this a go"?
Well, yeah, interesting enough. My wife, when I was first doing it, she thought I was doing it as a bit of a joke, and we had a laugh about it. She then saw the improvements. The fact that I stopped snoring, she said, "You're not coming off this diet for a long period of time." That was almost a golden rule. I tried to talk her to coming on the journey with me. My wife is quite slight. She's not the fittest person in the world, but she's certainly not unhealthy. She's what I would say pretty standard. She wasn't interested, and ironically, when I set up my YouTube channel, I think the second interview I did was with her because she said, "Let's do one about living with a carnivore." And it is quite funny with the things she comes out with, and she's all for people doing carnivore, but not for her. She likes her tomatoes, and she can't give up the tomatoes, which is ironic because it's deadly nightshade relation. So I keep joking with her, you carry on poisoning yourself and I'll get younger than you soon. So she's a few years younger than me anyhow, but I said I'm catching you up. So I went to one of my brothers in the summer, not long after I had started. So it was about third, not quite the fourth week in. And there was a number of my brothers and nieces and nephews there. And one of my nephews, who was around about 20 stone, he's taller than me. He was about 6'3", I think he said he was in one of the interviews I did with him. He saw the changes in me and did his own research. And then about a week later, he messaged me and said, "Hi, Uncle Carl. I've started doing carnivore and I can't believe how good it is. Thank you very much for doing what you did." So that was quite rewarding. We then did set up after he'd done a month or 2 months, I think it was. We did an interview on my channel, and the changes in him were even far more amazing than they were with me. And I was trying to stay neutral with it, but I was as proud as anything you could imagine that someone has followed me and has benefited from the things that I've been trying to do. He had some serious back issues. He had some two major surgeries on his back, so he always had a lot of issues in terms of arthritis in his joints, etc., because of the operations and that. And we did a follow-up one just after Christmas. We did a follow-up one, and the changes in James is just phenomenal. And he uses the expression, it was life changing. It was generally life changing. He was struggling to be mobile and do a fraction of the things he used to do. You look at him now, you think he's about 15, 20 years younger and so much fitter. So I was really chuffed. And he told me quite recently that his sister, my niece, has also started doing it. So I'm going to obviously hopefully encourage her to continue when she gets through the difficult patches and hopefully get her on the channel to do a talk. So personally, on the family wise, I've got a few of them doing it and they're really interested and very supportive of it. I think I'm crazy, but I'm a crazy guy, as you'll find out through the interview at the best of times. So I've got some friends doing it now who are all seeing benefits from it. I've not found to date anyone that's had a negative to say about the carnivore lifestyle that's tried it. Everyone that hasn't tried it, all negative. It's like a tsunami of negativity, and you're going to do this and how, because of, like me, I was brought up in the belief of low fat diets and high veg and the 5 a day and the pyramid and all this stuff, and believed it was right and tried to lose weight eating porridge and doing brands and all this side of it. But I have never had my body respond to a lifestyle like this in any other form that I've tried. And trust me, like most people that have been overweight, we've tried them all. And I can't emphasize enough. Give it a go. Do it for 2, 3 months. I think 3 months you get fantastic results. If you do it for a month, you'll get results, but you don't really understand how good they are until you go, I think, to the 90-day, 3 month period. And if you don't like it, say you've tried it, don't do it. I've not found anyone that's come off it.
You make a really good point there about the 90 days, 'cause, just thinking about it from the way I kind of observed things when they were happening. The first, month or something, that's like you're just so happy you're getting the weight loss. You
Yeah,
notice other things, but you're so focused on the weight loss up front, right?
yeah,
Because
100%.
it's still a diet. But then once you're 90 days in, that's when now loss has taken the back seat because
Mm.
you're noticing everything else.
100% agree. My original focus was to lose weight, okay, but that's almost now a side impact of why I'm on the and I try and avoid using the word diet where possible because I think it's lifestyle. Um, because the improvements on my blood pressure, the improvements on my resting heart rate, into my skin. I mean, we could probably touch upon it prior to doing the carnivore, and it wasn't the reason for doing the carnivore. I had a mark come up on my forehead, and it developed into being a skin cancer, which is not uncommon nowadays, unfortunately, but it's not like a death sentence either. So by the time my appointment came through to have it removed, I was already on carnivore. And I did a YouTube short about it, showing it before the day of the operation. I showed the scar had 15, I think it was 15 stitches, which you wouldn't believe is across here. That's all on there. And then because I was doing bone broth alongside eating the meat diet of it, when I went back a week later to have the stitches removed, the comment from the nurse doing it said, "Oh, why have you left it so late?" And I said, "What do you mean so late?" She said, "Well, you should have come back earlier to have these stitches. Your skin is far more healed than." And I said, "What are you talking about? I had it last Friday. This is a week." She could not believe, having taken stitches out, that I had only had that surgery within a week of her taking those out. So she had a real difficulty getting the stitches out because the way the skin had healed. I carried on documenting the wound, and within 3 weeks, I don't know how good my camera is, but you can't see even a white line of my scar. And again, putting my research head on, I thought, why is this? And I looked into it, and I didn't realize that with bone broth, it's very, very high in collagen, and collagen is fantastic for skin. And all my skin has improved beyond. I used to, like yourself, Dave. I've one of these sort of half beards, what you want to call a beard or whatever, and I used to get what I'd call beard rough, where you'd get the flaky stuff from your skin gone, completely gone, totally no dry skin. I had from judo injuries, I had other damages in my skin where I'd got cuts and bruises and bad that hadn't healed not very well. Unbelievable. I can't believe it. So there's so many other benefits from this lifestyle other than just weight loss. And as I touched upon, I'd lost 53 pounds in the first 3 months, which got me down to the sort of target area I wanted to be at. And I may have gone down a few and bits and pieces on there, but I'd plateaued out, and I'd plateaued out all the way through to Christmas. And I was happy. I was at a weight I wanted to be at, and I was thinking. So weight almost became secondary, if not third, in my interest. It was the health benefits, and my mind being so active, wanted to study it and say, right. I talk to people at the moment. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist in any way. But if I could talk from a position of authority, then perhaps people might listen to me some more. So that's why, and I did an interview with George. I'm sure you've done George as well from the UK. Brilliant character. And my study with him was he had lost all this 7 stone plus whatever he'd lost, but he continued drinking. But he had done his study, found out what drinks you could get away with and what you couldn't. So I was interested because everyone thinks, oh, I couldn't do without a beer, or I couldn't do without that. So I did him, but he kind of encouraged me to say, look, do it. There's all about nutrition, there's all about this, but carnivore itself has not been properly studied. And I mentioned about David Diamond, his his proof about fat and what we've done wrong with fat over the last 20, 30 years has really inspired me to get that message out there, that stop going to the old medicine because at one time the world was flat apparently, and that was the science as it was. Now so you've got to have that kind of questionable mind. So I want to try and get the PhD more to do with having a level of authority to talk about this subject to encourage others to get better. Because my wife loves a McDonald's, and again, I've done a couple of videos. I'll go to McDonald's, but I'll just have the meat patties. That's all I'll have. But you sit in a place like McDonald's, and you see so many people that you just want to say, "Please let me help you." Oh my God, what are you doing to yourself? And it's intrusive. It's their privacy. It's their rights to be as they are. But it's just so painful to think you can change your life just by changing your lifestyle with a minor change. And then Britain's famous for its NHS, but it's struggling and all that. If people adopted this lifestyle, the NHS would suddenly have a weight lifted off it in terms of all the obesity and all the associated illnesses and diseases that are associated with it. And then suddenly we all benefit from it. But it's just that people are so set in their ways, low fat, low fat, low fat.
And the sad thing is when you think about those people at McDonald's or the people filling up their shopping trolley with cereals and stuff,
Mm.
it's like for most of those people, they're just blissfully unaware.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
just going about day to day, and that's kind of what I think. For me, that's what makes me feel more like I wish I could just go and talk to them,
yeah,
but I can't because they're just going to think I'm a crazy person, right? But
exactly.
yeah. Hmm. Yeah, but if if they had some awareness, knew that there was some other option out there, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
hard not to preach about it because you're so suddenly the light has been switched on. You understand what's going on because that, if anything, that makes people put your tinfoil hat on and clear off and go somewhere else. But if I can do it the right way and I can then use my skill sets because I'm quite good at getting media coverage on various bits and pieces that I've done in the past. So I know how to get that and you can get that message out there. And as I say, I'm rewarded already because I've got two of my direct family members benefiting from what I've done. If I can multiply that across, hundreds of thousands of people, then that's a great thing, isn't it? It's not a bad thing.
The thing I really want to ask you about, and maybe you were kind of alluding to it before, you said something like you'll find out that I'm a bit crazy or something like that. You you had mentioned a few things and sent me a few images, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about them. I've seen a few images of you dressed as a knight.
Yeah. Well, my name is Day, and my daughter, when she was born with a heart issue. She had a large part of the heart's missing or hadn't properly formed. So from the age of day zero through to her 5, 6 year old, she had had some major heart operations, open surgery, various bits. She continues to be doing it, but she's now just in her late 20s. She's doing fabulously well. We've got a son as well who's mid 20s and also brilliant, doing well. But I always said that based on and again, everything she did was through the NHS. Even I had private medical because of the emergency and the urgency of it all happened, and I can't thank the NHS enough for the things that they've done. So I decided that with the British Heart Foundation that if my daughter got to past her last worst of her surgeries, that I would do something to raise some funds for them. And at the time, being a drinker of the Irish water or the black stuff, as some people call it, the Guinness, we mapped out an idea of, and my mate came up with the idea. Well, your name's Day, you got to do it as a night. So we decided to do well. This is apparently how it happened because obviously I'd had few more Guinnesses than I probably should have had. But we thought, what a great idea if I did the London Marathon in a medieval suit of armor, dressed as a knight, and raise some funds to the British Heart Foundation. Thought no more of it. About just under a week later, my phone buzzed, and it was eBay confirming I'd won my bid. And I'm going, my bid? What bloody have I bid on? And realised I'd spent £1,800 buying a medieval suit of armour. Obviously, Guinness owe me that. And obviously, when I spoke to my mate about it, he was laughing. He said, "Well, you know, you're doing the London Marathon next month. You signed up with the British Heart Foundation and committed to raise £2,500 for them to get a free space." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" And you get flashbacks, and you suddenly realise, "Oh my god, I did." So I then had to explain to what was then my first wife, second wife, sorry. We weren't going to go on holiday because I'd spent the holiday fund on buying a suit of armor. When she'd calmed down, and she said, "Well, what the hell did you buy that for?" Because I'm doing next month's London Marathon. Bearing in mind, I was not at my fittest at that point. So we did the London Marathon in 2010. And I can honestly tell you, with the reception I got there and the support from people while I was on it, was amazing. But it was 9 hours and 46 minutes of absolute hell. I will put up a link, or I can send you a link to what the BBC did. They did a fantastic little short for me, and they helped me raise several tens of thousands of pounds for the British Heart Foundation, which was the whole principle behind it, really. I then thought, well, how can I take this a bit further and raise some more money? So I started doing training in a medieval suit of armor. Bear in mind, that's 35 kilos in weight. So that's about 6.5 stone in weight. And it was an original piece of armor. So it was made for someone in those days that were about 5'10". And I've mentioned before, I'm 6 foot. So there was contact points that you didn't really like. And I think I sent you some pictures. I'm not sure you'll show them, some of the bruising I got from doing it. So I decided to do a triathlon in the medieval suit of armor. And near I live in Suffolk, there's a Wattlesham. It's a military triathlon that they do, where they do it in a swimming pool. And we started training for it. And I had like an army diver with me with an aqualung, and I was having. So if people wonder how I did the swimmer, I didn't. I marched under the pool, covering the distance. I then had to run the distance. I think it was about 10k run, and then I had to cycle for 20 odd k, and I got a tricycle which we were making up as a horse, so it looked like a knight on a horse, to raise the publicity for it. However, at the time I was the CEO of a business, and my fellow directors insisted I could only do it if I could get the relevant insurance, because it was mad. And unfortunately, I couldn't get the insurance to cover me. So I had to eventually curtail, after doing a lot of training and a lot of aches and pains. I couldn't actually go ahead and do the event because of no one would insure me to do it for some bizarre reason. So that's unfortunate. But I've done a few others. I did the what is known as the Rat Race, which is a 20-mile assault course over 200 hurdles and issues and climbs and all sorts. So that was an experience, again, very painful, but very rewarding for what we did. So I've got a bit of a background of doing things that when people say you can't do that, it's almost a trigger for me to do it.
Wow. And so you were practicing riding a tricycle
Yeah,
that was set up as a horse wearing knight's
suit
armor.
of armor. Yeah, yeah. And bear in mind, a suit of armor was designed to protect you, not to be mobile in. So most knights would be on a horse anyhow, but they wouldn't be moving their legs up and down and having the hip part go into the side of your waist every time. So you can appreciate I created quite a bit of bruising and a lot of soreness. But it was something to do, because obviously one of the successes I had in the London Marathon was I sold advertising spaces. I don't know if you've got the pictures, but I've sold advertising space on the suit of armor. So I kind of looked like a Formula One knight with all the adverts all over me, which was quite successful. So we were trying to maximize it for the triathlon to sell space on the horse as well as me, to increase the volume of revenue that we could generate for a charity.
So There was one other thing I wanted to ask you that you mentioned in the email, and that was stand-up. You do or have done stand-up before?
Yeah, yeah, I did. Being the youngest of seven, to make sure you were noticed, you had to stand out. So I used to be the witty one in the family, to make sure that mum didn't forget to put some food on my plate, you know. So I was always a bit of a comedian through school. Messed around, saw the funny side of things, was a massive Monty Python fan, even as a kid. I still say the funniest sketch ever is their sketch about paying for an argument. It's black and white. It's a very old one with John Cleese in it, but I think that is absolute genius setup because it's just ridiculous. So I always liked that sort of funny side of it. Loved people like Robin Williams and all that crazy off the wall. So with a mate of mine and he said he wanted to do some comedy writing. Let's go on a comedy writing course. So I said, yeah, I'm up for that. So we went up to London for a couple of days, not knowing at the end of the writing course you had to perform what you written. So we were literally told about 3 hours before what you're writing is you've got to perform in front of a live audience tonight, blah blah blah. So it was a bit of a, oh my god, and it's a squeaky bum time as we call here in England. But I went on. I wrote about what I knew, which was my family. So I'd say things about the best thing about being the youngest of seven boys was when your mother remembered your name, she forgot what she was telling you off for. Uh, when you got the hand-me-downs, they were back in fashion. And when it was your turn, the toilet seat was finally warm. So that's that kind of sort of silly, crude side of it. Talk about my mum being Irish, used to come up with some amazing things that were just hilarious. She broke a teapot once, and I said, "What's the matter, Mum?" She said, "I've broken it into three halves." You know, and you can't argue with that sort of logic. And my brother recalled once her saying, my mum being Catholic was very church driven, a great believer, huge faith, and she would say about this wonderful lady at the church that did amazing things in brothels, and we're like, what? She meant Brussels, you know. So I had a whole stream of family humor that I could do, so I put it in there. And when you get that first laugh from total strangers, the rush that you get from it was fantastic. And I actually said, sod the writing, I want to do the performing. So I started chasing every gig I could get, a 5 minute slot or a 10 minute slot. You know, I'd travel half across the UK and get not paid for it, but just to do it to get the exposure. And I thought, this is crazy. I'm working a day job, and then I'm traveling 3-4 hours to do 5 minutes, and then traveling 3-4-5 hours to get home, and then getting up in the morning to go to work. So I had the bright idea, well, why don't I set up my own comedy club that I can then be the MC and learn my trade? I know enough people now from my travels who I could book in, sell a few tickets, donate the money to charity, sort of thing. So we set up Big Cheese Comedy with a friend or two friends of mine. One's the clever one with the finances side of it, and the other one's a designer. He does all our logos and all our promotional stuff. He knows how to do all the media side of it, so he's brilliant. And I fronted up the comedy, and it just went from success to success. And in a very short period of time, I was running, because my business model was to take it to a venue rather than have a venue. So football clubs, rugby clubs, social clubs, put on a comedy night for them. They sell the tickets, they pay us our fees, they earn their money, helps them raise funds for their organization. Any profits we made, we would do a charity event free of charge, and the money for those would go to the charity that we had chosen. And it was a simple model. I didn't really want to earn any from it because I was paying enough tax being a CEO. So it was more about a hobby and a bit of fun. But in a very short period of time, over probably about a year, I was then doing comedy gigs at different venues across the UK. So basically, I found myself traveling 4 or 5 hours, spending an hour setting up for the lighting, the sound, and all the bits and pieces, doing my little bit of comedy, and then coming. So I was back again to traveling and doing all this effort when I was trying to set up the comedy club to avoid doing all the traveling. So we curtailed it a little bit, especially after COVID, because obviously that kind of killed the whole market. So we've focused pretty much very much on East Anglia, my local region. We do still 4, 5, 6 gigs a month. I'm not as involved as I was. I still involved, but because I want to get on the focus of doing the study, which takes a lot of time, I'm taking a slight back step. I'm still doing it, and whenever a comedian doesn't turn up, I jump in quickly and fill up the time and all that, and I love it. And I'm exploring improv more now. I'm loving just interacting with the audience, and I love it when you ask someone their name and their name's Matt, for example, and you say, "Welcome, Matt." Do you feel someone keeps standing on you? And so you just, or if there's someone that looks like somebody, you can play around with that, and the audience love all that. I have one story I will share with you, which is my wife will shoot me for this, but we I did a gig in Colchester, which is a large town. It's now a city now in my region, and it's a garrison town, so it's an army barracks within the town. And we had about 300 people in this room. I was the MC, and I was wearing a crazy suit, sort of thing, just to keep the attention going while the acts are coming on and off. And during the first act, there was a couple of squaddies, soldiers from the parachute regiment, who are quite out there sometimes, were being a bit annoying and trying to put the guy off, and I didn't like it. The previous weekend, I had gone on a friend's stag do, mainly to provide some entertainment, but also to be on my mate's stag do. And I'm not going into the reasons why, because what's away stays away. But I somehow in my bag ended up with a mankini, the old Borat mankini. Okay. So I thought, right, I'll have these guys. So in the first interval, I put the mankini on, put the suit and shirt back on, went back on stage to open up. And I pointed at these guys because you can see the audience were getting annoyed by it as well, and you've got to keep the audience on side. So I got the noisiest one to come up on stage. What he didn't know, had spoken to my sound guy, and the minute he was to step on stage, he was to play "Time of My Life" from the Dirty Dancing film. And the reason why is in the front row there was a hen party that were quite rowdy, hen ladies, getting drunk, etc. So I thought I'd play on this. So as he stepped on the stage, the music came on, and I said to this guy, by the way, all these hen girls, woo, they're loving all the music. I said to this guy, look, you're so funny. I'm not going to take you onto a joke competition. I'm going to challenge you to a dance off. And he went, what you talking about? So I undone my jacket and put it on the mic stand. I then literally just ripped my shirt open, buttons flying everywhere, dropped my trousers, and I'm standing there in this mankini. Now, this guy, paratrooper, soldier, really tough guy, went white. He just didn't know what the hell was going on. His mates are killing themselves laughing. The audience are loving it. So I said, before we do this dance off, it's important for health and safety we do a warm up. So I stepped on the table of one of the hen party and started lunging. And unfortunately for me, not being an experienced mankini wearer, after about the third lunge, a part of my anatomy popped out. To laughter of the great laughter of the audience, and one of the mothers politely tidied that up for me and put it away again. So you can appreciate the room is electric. It is rocking in laughter. So I turned back to the guy with the mic, and I said to him, look, the music's gone on. Let's just do the famous lift from the film. And he's like, you couldn't lift me. You could, So I turned to the audience to do it. So there's 300 people baying for this guy's blood, for him to run to me, for me to do the lift. So it's a very short stage. So he does this run up, and as he gets to me, I step aside. So he goes flying off the stage to a massive cheer of the audience. And I said, this is what happens when you heckle the acts. Ladies and gentlemen, keep the laughter going. And I introduced the next act, who came on to a massive elations of laughter and cheers. And he went, how the hell do I follow that? So that got me quite well known on the circuit, to the point that people kept trying to book the Mankini Man, and I kept explaining to people it was a one-off. It was a one-off to catch someone out. I've done it 3 times since, but I mean that's another story. But so that's the kind of comedy I do. Very visual, very stupid, but harmless fun.
And I'm assuming no paratroopers in the.
Well, the irony is 2 of my brothers are ex-paras.
So you knew how to handle it, right?
I knew what they were like. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So regarding your YouTube channel and also any details about the Big Cheese comedy you've got, do you have any addresses for us?
Yeah, yeah. So,
So,
so the comedy has its own website, and it's ironically Big Cheese Comedy, all one word, .co.uk, or I think .com works
mhm,
as well. I think we've got both. So that's Big Cheese, and they'll be up there where the acts are. It's very UK based. It's more East Anglian based, but there's regular shows on there, and we get TV comedians to come and close quite often. So it's good, and we don't run Big Cheese. Well, if certainly don't run it as a profit. But it's a hobby, but it's a professionally run. I've got some good guys involved with me now, help me doing the setup. Justin and Shelley and people like that are just absolutely outstanding. But yeah, so we'll put
mm,
it on for companies, we'll put it on for venues, to help them raise funds. We charge a fee, but we make sure that obviously the ticket sales are far surprise past that, and obviously they then gain. So it's a win-win for everybody. In terms of the channel, as you can see in my name on here, it's Carnivore Nation on YouTube. I have got a
yeah.
TikTok as well, which one did go a bit mental. The one about my cancer and the scar improvement went a bit mental, and it's about 250,000 views in about 3 days. So that was quite impressive. Well, the other ones are more me just being silly or a bit of fun or trying to be informative or review. I'm doing a series with George, reviewing online meat boxes, etc. So we're getting various different meats, and there's some good value out there. You just got to use your brain. I've
Mm,
got to the from going from supermarket meat to I'm a big fan of supporting the local butcher. So I regularly go to two of our different local butchers to do that. But if you're worried about the cost of it, because that's a question you often get, if you go to some of these places where you can buy a 3 kilo ribeye or a 3 kilo sirloin, you cut it up, and the economy of scale is phenomenal. I had a box recently that was £47 for 20 ribeye steaks. I'm not sure if it was old Christmas stock they hadn't sold or whatever it was, but it worked out about £2.30 a steak.
mm.
Where a supermarket cheap steak you're talking at £4 or £5, and a quality steak you're talking about £7 or £8. So, and the quality was fantastic. It was great. Because I'm doing lion diet, I'm very focused on my steaks at the moment because it's predominantly all I'm eating with salt and water. Uh, when I was on the carnivore, I will be on the carnivore obviously, but eggs and bacon were obviously introduced, other meats that were introduced. So if you be smart about it. Carnivore doesn't need to be what everyone perceives as an expensive diet, because they think of steak and they think of a restaurant price for steak, not buying at a retail side. So I'm trying to help educate people that there are deals out there of good value. Lauren recently bought a whole sheep for about £175 at the time. She sent me her clip, and I turned it into a little mini video, and we worked that out. It was because she'd got something like 30 pork chops, and they were proper big, thick pork chops. She had obviously 4 legs. She had 2 bits of shoulder. She had rolled ram, and we worked it out. It worked out about, for a family of four, it was £7 a meal, or just under £2 a person per meal, by doing it that way. But one, you've got a light lamb. Um, Two, you've got to have somewhere to store it. But it's about having that initial money to save yourself money, and that's an area that I'm trying to promote a little bit for. And it's all good for businesses. Farmers are under enough cosh at the moment, being squeezed. So if I can help them sell more produce through online direct to customer, then I'm going to support that, and obviously local butchers as well. I'm not a fan of supermarket meat, but sometimes some people's budgets can only stretch to that, so you got to do the best you can.
And so you mentioned the TikTok account as well. How what is that also Carnivore Nation?
Yes, Carnivore
The
Nation as well.
the
Yeah,
okay, okay,
but it's
cool.
Carnivore Nation 7, because I did originally set up Carnivore Nation. Unfortunately, lost all the sign-ins and bits. I've tried to get it changed, so I had to set up a new one called Carnivore Nation 7, because I'm the seventh son.
Mm,
So the active one is, but there is, I think there was a link between the two, but I can't get hold of the Carnivore Nation one. That's because I'm not necessarily the most technology skilled on that front. Can I just add one bit? If anyone wants to read any
Sure.
book, get this book. Oh, sorry, get this book. I
Mm,
hope I can get focus on it. All right,
yeah.
I'll send you the details on it, Dave. It's a
Oh,
book
yeah,
about
please.
fat. Dave Diamond promoted it, and I bought it, and it's going to be very much part of my detail on there. It's a whole group of guys called from an organised called Thinks, THINCS. It is honestly, it will change anyone's mind about fat and diet on that. It is an amazing book, and I can't recommend it enough. I'll send you the details on it after the call, so you can put that on there, Dave. It is an amazing book.
Sure. Thanks so much for your time today, Carl. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. I hope people have found it amusing as well.